I'm Dan. Thanks for checking in on Dimgaard again this week. The thing that came up this week that it came up to differing degrees in both sessions that I ran this week is managing the flow of downtime and the adventure, right? So what we ideally want is a continuous flow of the story, right? Where you have, the elements of downtime that are not really played out in the session. They're just sort of narrated. It can be narrated like, in chat during the week. But you have these elements that the PCs are doing during downtime, and then you want, whenever you look back on the situation, you want that to flow very smoothly into the actual adventuring that we do in person during the session. And that is a difficult thing to manage, to be very frank. Not only is it something that I'm still working on, but I have yet to encounter a DM whose campaign really does manage that in a level that I would be happy with, that I would say, oh no, this is the way it's supposed to be. Just structurally, there are some hurdles that have to be overcome. The first one is just the way that players, myself included, approach the game of 5th edition, right? In that, you just view downtime and actual in-person adventuring as like distinctly separate things, right? Like even in a campaign like Adventurely, right? So but it's true in mine too, like in Dimgaard as well. You're going to sit down and play the game, right, in the session, and you have other players there with you, and you see that as one process, and that is completely distinct from the elements of the character building or world building or resource acquisition that goes on away from that session, right? Where we're in, and really changing that just mechanically to where it all flows is well, first of all, I don't know that you could in organized play, right? Because in order to change that to where downtime and adventuring are a seamless integration, you're going to have ongoing communication between the players and the DM, and you just don't have that in organized play very often. Usually in organized play, the session is very atomic. In between, you don't even know who your DM is necessarily going to be for the next session. So organizing a continuous story becomes difficult. You're kind of on your own. Now you can craft it with your own character. You can say, yeah, okay, my character went on this adventure, and then that flowed into him, doing these things, right, based upon story awards and tool proficiencies like craft potions and backgrounds like things that he could do, or sometimes there are like things that you can do in downtime with other players that you arrange, like spell casting, exchanging spell castings, copying spells from another wizard's spell book. So you can do that with your own individual character, but it's really hard to build that into an integrated story with the DM, because you don't know who that DM is going to be next. Now and that's true whenever we run Dimgaard at conventions, right? So downtime becomes a much harder thing to integrate into the storyline. But when it comes to like the play testing, that is usually a cogent set of players that has the same DM all through these long running adventures, and we can restructure the nature of the game so that downtime becomes a much more integral part of the story arc. And like I said, so that involves, sharing the downtime instead of it being a solo character thing. It becomes, these characters are going to work together to achieve this thing, right? During downtime. But then there are other things that come up in downtime. You don't want downtime to just be an open-ended blank check, right? Like the DM needs to, say, yeah, you can't. You had 5 days of downtime. That doesn't mean you could travel to Mount Celestia and brought back a legendary item, right? Like there's got to be there. So you need the DM to offer constraints on that, and you need, so then you have to give the DM the guidance and resources to manage that. So in Dimgaard we have a lot of elements to help with that. The biggest one, like the most influential one, the most significant one that comes up over and over again, is the one true fate, right? Because the one true fate is this sort of pervasive backdrop against all the Dimgaard adventuring, right? And it affects many things in the story arc, but especially what goes on in the downtime, right? So during adventuring, you have PCs can do things that put them afoul of the one true fate, and then they have to use their downtime to get things right again, or they become branded criminals whose adventuring career becomes just avoiding the one true fate. And then on the other end, there have been lots and lots of characters who embrace the one true fate, and so then that gives them, in addition to the storyline of the adventure, in order to work with that character building, it gives them a whole range of things that they can do in service to the one true fate. Help orphans, or establish a sect within the one true fate, or help to change the attitude of the one true fate against a marginalized population, like that happened that's happened over time with goblins and gnomes in Dimgaard, both of which at the beginning of 5th edition they were viewed as monsters within the one true fate, and there have been many PCs at this point who have been dedicated to changing that relationship with the one true faith between goblins and gnomes and the one true, and there's been successful, and it's been interesting. It's been a very important element of world building and character development in the Dimgaard games. The goblins are interesting to me because there are many of these marginalized races in Dimgaard. I mean, kobolds, and bullywugs, and lizard folk, and on and on and on. Even things like merfolks and for some reason, players really tend to like goblins. Like it was in 5th edition, it was one of the earliest adventures we ran where we presented the Hornskull goblins. Name of the adventure was "And the Goblin King Wailed," and players just loved those goblins. they felt like, oh, they just embraced them and said, oh, we need to change the way that goblins are viewed. and have been working for 7 years in many of these campaigns to change the opinion of different. And I mean, there have been a lot of orcs presented and ogres and lizard folk, and no one has really gravitated and embraced any of those marginalized populations the way the goblins are. I don't know what it is about the goblins that players seem to really sympathize with and really want to get behind and become activists for them again in Dimgaard. But it's interesting. It's fun. You know, it's really fun, and it's really good for Dimgaard. These provide an indefinite amount of fodder for downtime activities, right? And as the campaigns go, it's very, very common in the Dimgaard, you know, the level 1 to 20 campaigns that that PCs will end up either conquering or rescuing one of these marginalized populations, and then at the end of the adventure, is like, you know, as part of the conclusion of the episode, like, okay, so you have rescued this tribe of kobold, lizard folk, bullywugs, like, or conquered them or whatever. And it's like, now what are you going to do? What are you going to do with these 200 kobolds? And it's like, it's not something you have to answer on the spot, right? Like it is meant to be something that players take away and think, okay, I've got these 200 kobolds that are now looking to me because, you know, I'm the strong person that has come in and presented myself as the authority figure, and they have been forced to recognize that. And now same thing with bullywugs and lizard folk and all of these marginalized populations. And you know, so what are you going to do with them now? So that's how you set up the opening of the next episode. It's like, okay, you've got so that's good. And then it also so there's a burden there that puts upon DMs too, right? Because part of downtime, like I said, you can't just write a blank check, and part of the constraints on downtime is the understanding, and this is really developed very well in Xanathar's, that almost all downtime activities should have a rival who is working in opposition to the pieces, at least one, right? And you want to, you know, so you show up at the beginning of the session and you say, okay, what are you going to do with this for this 5 days of downtime, 4 days of downtime, whatever the downtime is. Sometimes there is no downtime. Sometimes it's like, okay, you completed a long rest and now we're moving on to the next adventuring day. But sometimes you have very long downtime periods, months in these campaigns. And it's like, okay, you can really dig your teeth in to these elements that have been presented as something to be resolved in a long-term way. And that's really good. It's really good for the game. Like it takes the players and it lets them view their PCs in a much more fleshed out way, right? Like it gets them to look at their PCs as heroic individuals in the scape of Dimgaard, and not just as a bundle of traits that can be exercised in combat or in the actual element of the session. You know, you get to see them as you know, tribal leaders or friends to certain populations or enemies to certain populations, or, you know, they establish themselves as nobility and all sorts of good things that really does broaden the players appreciation of their character, helps them to define their character, gives them much more of a long-term personal investment in. Now, sometimes, and this is completely valid, there are players who don't want that, right? Like there are players who are like, no, I don't want that. I want to show up with my PC and go on an adventure and go and then I've got to get back to my accounting job the rest of the week, and that's what I want. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing. That's a completely valid way to approach the game, and I have Dimgaard players who very much have that approach to their Dimgaard campaigns successfully. I think that they are foregoing a lot of the real benefits of having a campaign where you have the continuity of the same group of players and the same DM over many weeks, going from level 1 to 20. But that is like I said, that's a completely valid way to approach D&D, right? It's not. I completely sympathize and understand the idea that no, this is not I don't want this to be an ongoing commitment through my week. I want to sit down, enjoy it as a 4-hour pastime one day a week, and then get on with my life. Completely valid, completely understand that. But I do think that you, by making that decision, you are really constraining yourself as to what you can get from the game, and in particular what Dimgaard offers in that, right? So one of the big selling points for Dimgaard over something like organized play is that it is expected to be a campaign where you can develop your characters more fully and integrate it into the setting. Unlike like in Adventure League, I don't care how much time you put in or how creative or diligent you are, your PC is never going to affect the plot lines of the Forgotten Realms that they're playing out in Adventure League. Now, I realize that's a blanket statement, and that certainly there are some groups of players somewhere out there in the world who are influential enough so that their PCs do in fact get have influences on the plot lines that are used in Adventure League. I've met a few of those influential players, and they're good players, and I have nothing against them. I am glad that they have that capacity. But for the other 10 million players who are playing, they have to reconcile themselves to the fact that no, my PC is really never going to affect the environment of the world. They're not going to be integrated into the Forgotten Realm lore. But Dimgaard does offer that, right? So Dimgaard says, yes, you can. I hear from people with stories that are fantastic and amazing, and fairly routinely incorporate them into the backdrop of and the world building of Dimgaard. But I'm off on a tangent there. So like I said, this approach it does add certain elements of that are required by the DM beyond just sitting down and running the game, right? So the DM has got to understand the broader set of NPCs who can act as downtime rivals. And so whenever at the beginning of the session, whenever the players say, well, I'm crafting these scrolls, or I'm I am developing within this tribe of kobolds that I'm responsible for. I'm developing a core set of like judicial types who can resolve conflicts within the tribe, or even negotiate on the tribe's behalf out with the surrounding populations. Then you need to understand, okay, well, there's going to be some opposition to that. Who would be the opposition to that? And incorporate that into the narrative. So it's not just a blank check, right? So it's like, okay, so you're going to develop that core, and then I know that the order of Foltus is going to be just patently opposed to that, to the idea of monsters negotiating or self-ruling themselves, and then incorporate that into the narrative to explain, so what inevitably happens in those situations is you then have players who say, well, okay, well, I'm going to fight with them. We need to get some dice on the table and roll initiative. And that cannot be part of downtime, right? Like that is adventuring time there. But that is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because what you have in Dimgaard is you have a growing library of standalone adventures, right? So that whenever the players are engaging in these downtime activities, and you see the opportunities, like, oh, wait a second, there is a rivalry involved here. This is not just going to be a matter of narration. This needs to be played out over the course of actual in-game elements. You can present one of those standalone adventures, like just recently in both of the current campaigns. They were like, well, we want to go find some dwarves. They knew that dwarves were excellent crafters. We want to go find some dwarves and see if they have some better weapons or armor and stuff. And I was like, okay, yeah, that involves more than just saying I'm going to do this during downtime. It's going that there's going to be opposition involved there, right? Like there are dwarven politics that would be involved in turning over dwarven crafted elements to non-dwarves, and or even like elements of the one true faith who could be opposed to non-humans going in and co-opting these resources. So and I was like, okay, we've got an adventure for that, right? We've got a standalone adventure for that, where the PCs go to a dwarven community, get involved in the dwarven politics. They resolve an underground slave ring that some of the dwarves have going on there. Anyway, it's an adventure, right? So it set up that adventure whenever coincidentally both of these, where they were both at about the same level, so it was appropriate for both of their levels, and so we did that as a standalone adventure. So it didn't involve advancement, like there wasn't. It didn't, because that we want to maintain that within the flow of the main storyline. But we had these 1 week off where we printed as standalone adventures. And then even if you think, well, this is not really a plot line that would sustain a full session. We have a growing library of special encounters. So if the PCs are doing something in downtime that's going to put them afoul of a particular group, maybe Drow or Fultons or whoever, you can just manage the time and pull out one of those special encounters, add that as the 7th encounter for the next session, to say, okay, yeah, you're doing this during downtime, you have these rivals, and it's not really appropriate to narrate the result. We're going to actually have to have a special encounter to decide the outcome there, right? And these are all really good things. Like I'm not complaining about these situations, right? But they are an expansion. They are something that the DM has got to decide that he's or she is willing to commit to, and establish those as part of their game. I think that it's worth it. When I know I find it worth it whenever I do. Um, uh, and So that's where I stand on integrating downtime and adventuring. And like I said, this is I do not believe that I am at the I do not believe I am in the position that I will finally land on regarding this matter. This is very much something that I work through pretty much every session. Like with every group, I work on progressing my philosophy regarding integrating downtime and adventuring. So it would be very helpful to me if people would offer up their experiences and their opinions on integrating downtime and adventuring. There's room here in the comments. You can email me at dimgaard@gmail.com. You can post a message on the Discord server, or send me a message on Facebook or Twitter. Yeah, all of those would be great. And like I said, I really would like it on this particular topic. If you have advice or observations regarding downtime and how to make it more effective and more important, and more smoothly integrated into the storyline, so that it's not this distinct element separate from adventuring. Yeah, I would love to hear that in any of those channels. And if you find these videos helpful or interesting, it's always a good idea to hit the like button there, right? Like it's going to help it get seen by other people. Come out with these every week. Been doing a pretty good job, I think, of getting them out every week. So if you like them, want to make sure you don't miss any of them, go ahead and subscribe. And so looking forward to that feedback, and I thank you for your time this week, and hope things go well.